want to give a big shout out to this video's sponsor, Instant Gaming, which is a website where you can buy discounted games at up to 90% off. This includes Sims packs, but also brand new trending games like Supermarket Simulator and more. So make sure you click the link in my bio to use my affiliate link when shopping on their website, and don't forget to join the monthly giveaway they're hosting on the channel for a chance to win any game of your choice off their website. And without further ado, let's get into the video. What's the deal, pickles? Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. I'm Kia Sims, and today I am back with another tutorial type video that is going to be all about how I build and decorate in The Sims 4. This has been a highly requested video, and I'm really excited to share some of the tricks that I've learned over the years with you all, okay? But I do just want to specify before I say anything else that there is no correct or incorrect way to build, okay? We all have our different build styles, our different decorating styles, and we all like different things. So if you watch this video and you decide that you don't want to do something the way I do it, that is completely fine, okay? You're not going to be building wrong if you don't do something the way I do it. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning every day when it comes to building, and yeah, but I wanted to make this video and share some of the things that I think could be helpful, especially for beginner builders. And so we're just going to start off with some tips before we actually go into build mode. And so my first tip is going to be to use reference pictures, okay? Reference pictures are our friends. We should use them at every opportunity. I will occasionally build a house completely from scratch, you know, no inspo picture, just vibes. But those builds take much more time because I don't have an outline. You can literally compare it to when you go in the kitchen and you know you want to eat, you know, you're hungry, but you don't know what's in the fridge. You know, so now you're spending extra time trying to decide what you want to eat. You're picking things up and putting them back down because you're changing your mind. It's literally just like that. And so a reference image helps you to have a goal when you go to build. It helps you determine, like, hey, I want to build something that looks like this, and I will be satisfied when it looks like this. And so references are great. But my second piece of advice that I want to put out there is that yes, references are good, but floor plans are great, okay? Try to find floor plans. And I made this the second piece of advice because it can be a little bit harder to find a floor plan versus a reference, but they still save you time. And so you can literally find them just by like searching like Zillow or any other house website. Sometimes on Pinterest, the pictures will also have links to floor plans that might actually lead to a website. But yeah, also just Googling like house floor plans will bring you to websites that will usually have pictures of houses and their layouts, and you can literally just transfer those over and attempt to build them in The Sims. Because again, imagine you get your reference picture and you make the shell of a house, but now you have no idea where the kitchen is or where the master bedroom is because you just have this big square with nothing inside it. And so it's going to save you time if you go into a build already knowing what goes where. It also helps to make builds more naturally shaped, especially the backs of houses. But of course, you can always ignore floor plans or stray from them a little bit if they don't fit your individual Sims needs. I tend to do that a lot. And sometimes, you know, the picture of a house you want to build doesn't have a floor layout picture attached to it, and you might still want to try to build that house because you really like it. And that just means you're just gonna have to spend a little bit more time figuring out the floor plan on your own. But for beginners, this is a tip that I still want to mention because it definitely helps. It definitely helps to have a step-by-step process to follow. And so the third tip is kind of more so for if you're not using a floor plan, but it's to be mindful of where you're placing rooms. You want to put rooms and walls in places that mimic real life and make sense. You don't walk through someone's front door into their bedroom or bathroom. Typically, the front of the house is going to be a living room or a family room or some sort of, you know, just open room, or maybe a kitchen, depending on the size of the build, if it's like a small apartment. But if you're going for realism, you're going to want to also add things like closets or laundry rooms or pantries, because these are all elements that will make a build feel more like a real house. And again, if you're using a floor plan, these types of rooms will most likely be pointed out to you. It'll say like WIC for walk-in closet, and it'll tell you exactly where to position things like this. but if you're just winging it, you kind of just have to remember, which is why I try to follow my next tip most of the time, which is to build your floor plan up first before decorating. I think most builders build like this. I know I do, but it's honestly just the easier way to build a house from the ground up, in my opinion, instead of doing it room by room. It helps to make the house feel more cohesive. It helps to make the whole build feel cohesive just from the jump, instead of just, you know, saying, hey, this is the living room, and then decorating the living room and then adding on a hallway next to it. Like that's complicated. Doesn't that sound complicated? And so with all this in mind, we're gonna go ahead and go find a reference picture with a floor plan to follow so that we can move on to some other tips. And so I'm on this website right now. It's literally called floorplans.com. I wanted to do something really small for the sake of this tutorial, so I'm not doing anything more than 2 bedrooms, no more than 1.5 baths. We're doing 1 story, and so I'm just gonna scroll through here for a second until I find a cute little house that I want to recreate real quick for the sake of this tutorial. Okay, and so after a few minutes of scrolling, I went ahead and found this little floor plan. I went ahead and chose it because it has like some different shaped rooms, some different sized rooms here, and then the floor plan is right here. Again, this is just a perk of using a website with a floor plan, and it shows you, you know, this is the porch. You walk in, you can see a living room, you can see a staircase, which is interesting because it's supposed to be 1 story, so we're gonna ignore the staircase. But you can see there's a living room, you can see a bedroom right here, a bathroom, another bedroom. You can just see the entire layout of this build. And so this is what I'm going to go ahead and attempt to create in The Sims for the sake of this tutorial. And so I'll go ahead and put the picture on the screen for y'all once we are in game. And so I actually had my mic muted during this entire build portion, but basically the first thing I'm doing is looking at the top reference picture and following it to make a path from the driveway and the door. And y'all will notice that I actually strayed from the reference picture a little bit because I actually didn't like the idea of the path having that like little triangle shape thing going on. But I'm just mapping out everything to the best of my abilities right now. So I'm starting with the porch, and sorry about all the crazy mouse movements on the screen. Like I said, I was originally trying to explain in real time what I was doing, but I ended up muting my mic. But basically, I'm just trying to create all the rooms in the floor plan at this point. Again, with a few changes here and there, which I had to do because sometimes I realized like a room wasn't exactly sized right, or maybe I didn't have enough room on the lot where I was building. But I eventually ended up with a layout that looks like this, and I go ahead and add some lights in the rooms because I don't like working in dark rooms. But eventually I start to work on the roof, and I wish I could tell you that I had a super helpful tip for building roofs, but honestly it took me a very long time to get the roof the way I liked. But I just really do my best, again, to mimic whatever roof I see in my reference picture. And I personally swear by the idea of out of sight, out of mind when it comes to roofing. So sometimes you'll see in my builds, I got like 2 different size roofs stacked on top of each other. And honestly, as long as it doesn't look crazy, it doesn't bother me not one bit. But I will say that I think roof height is very relevant to builds. I tend to prefer roofs that aren't too tall unless I'm going for a more dramatic style house. And also I want to let those of y'all who build on PC know that there's a shortcut for adjusting portions of the roof. Not the portion that goes like up and down to make the roof taller, but the ones that go left to right, and they basically make the sides of the roof jut out a little bit. But if you want to adjust only one side, then holding shift while dragging that will actually allow you to do that. But eventually I end up with a roof that I was somewhat satisfied at this point. And so I start to go in and add some flooring to the rooms. I don't think I ended up staying with any of the flooring I put down, but it's a good trick I use for myself to remember what a certain room is supposed to be. For example, I'm putting tile flooring in the bathroom, kitchen, and laundry room, and carpet in the bedrooms so that I don't forget what certain rooms are supposed to be. I didn't mention that as a number tip or anything because I don't really think it improves the build process or anything by doing it, but it's just a memory trick for me since I'm extremely forgetful. And then I just continue on making a few creative choices and changing a few things to the layout, like opening up the kitchen and adding a back porch. But my next tip is an important one, I think, and it comes to play once you're done with the layout, but it's to scale your rooms with objects, because I think a common place where people go wrong when they're first starting to build houses is making rooms too big or too small, because when a house is empty like this, it's kind of hard to get an accurate idea of like the scale, especially if you build without the grid like I do. And so I'm just placing some counters in the kitchen to see how many I can fit in there and deciding if the kitchen that I have built so far at this point is a good size. And the answer to that question depends completely on the kind of build you're doing, I think. Like in this house, for example, because it's not a mega mansion or anything, I'm perfectly fine with a relatively small / normal size kitchen. However, if I were building like a mansion in the hills or something, then it might make sense for my kitchen to be really big, or for the bedrooms to be super big. And so again, some of these things you just have to kind of decide for yourself, but I think it can still be really helpful to do this scaling trick with actual in-game objects. I also did this with a bed in the bedroom, and it helps to make sure that you're making functional rooms that your Sims can actually access and use without any routing issues. And I'm not being super picky about the furniture or anything either. I literally don't plan on keeping any of these items. I'm using them solely for scaling purpose. But a few minutes later, once I've established the size of my rooms are good, I start to get more intentional with things like flooring and furniture choices. I also around this point do end up adding that staircase that I originally said I was going to ignore, because I realized that it was supposed to lead to like an attic situation, and it kind of pulled the space in the living room together. And so I spent a few minutes on that and trying to make like roof accommodations and everything for the new addition to the house. But I do manage it eventually, and we end up back inside working on the kitchen. And this is the only room that I guess y'all can technically call furnished. I didn't really focus on decorating in this video, but if y'all would like some cluttering / decorating tips in a second video, definitely let me know. But I know I struggle for a few minutes choosing counters, and again, this comes down to individual style and the kind of build you're going for. There's no universally correct counters that I can tell y'all to use. You just put down whatever you like. And I didn't use the reference picture from earlier for this kitchen specifically, but usually I would if I wanted some new ideas on where to place counters and stuff in the kitchen. But I just did a pretty basic kitchen this time around with a cute little island counter, because one thing about me and my builds, they're gonna have an island counter, okay? I really like islands, and again, that's a personal choice. I then jump around and end up back outside, where I start to work on the exterior again and make some changes to the outside of the house just so that I'm a little bit more satisfied with the look of it. I definitely stray from the first reference picture. I know it's not on the screen anymore, but I changed the windows in the front because I ended up not liking the one we had placed down at first. I'm also going in and changing wallpaper and foundation and all that. Eventually I start to mess with the terrain by the garage because I actually wanted it to look like it was more on a hill instead of like on the raised foundation, because that makes more sense for how our imaginary car gets in and out of the garage. But terrain can definitely be tricky, and I'm kind of a beginner to it myself, so this is definitely something I'd only recommend doing if you have a lot of patience. But after a few more deliberations about the counters and flooring and wallpaper and tiny things like that, I start to move on to grabbing some things from buy mode finally. And so I'm just adding the necessities to the bathroom, making the closets look like closets with CC, and I do just want to throw out a few hotkey shortcuts because I always forget that not everybody knows them. But to move items freely and off the grid, I'm holding down the Alt key while moving them, and to copy a selected item without using the like picker tool, I'm pressing Shift key, which copies it while I have the item selected. And of course, I'm using bb.moveObjects to place items without getting an error message or without being restricted. And another tip that I want to throw out that I sometimes forget to follow, but it's going to be tip number 6, which is to place windows once the layout is finalized. And I know y'all saw me put down the windows in the front of the house way earlier, but this tip mostly applies to the walls on the sides and the back of the house, because building rooms around windows can be surprisingly difficult, I think. It kind of forces you in a box for where you can place items. An example I'll throw out real quick is, imagine if I would have put like giant windows windows in the bathroom before I knew those rooms were going to be bathrooms, that would have bothered me later on, because it's like, girl, why can everybody see your sim showering? But by adding windows after the layout was finalized, I knew to make sure that the windows specifically in the bathroom were small and not in front of the shower or anything. And it's not like you couldn't just change the windows after the fact, but I think it would be more of a hassle, especially if you made a mistake like that in the front of the house where you want the windows placed a certain way so that the house looks a certain way from the front. So it's kind of a minor tip, but one I thought I would include anyway. But I'm just going in and adding more furnishings. Nothing major, but I'm adding some backsplashes to help break up the kitchen a little bit, plus some nicer looking lights. And then I think I jump outside one last time to add some trees and flora to the outside of the house, which always ties houses together in my opinion. And again, there's not a correct way to do this. I just eyeball it most of the time, but I do try to stick to a general rule of thumb, that is to limit myself to 3 or 4 houses per lot, unless it makes sense for the lot to have more than that. I also go in and add some dirt detailing under the trees and bushes and stuff after they're placed down to make it look a little bit more realistic. And I end up adding a fence to the back of the house just to tie everything together a little bit more back there. And so we're in the final stretch of the video at this point, but I'm just going in and adding, I guess, a few quality realistic touches. So I made a pantry in the kitchen, like I mentioned in the beginning, because I think it's always nice to include that in a kitchen, and also because personally I play with a lot of mods that add like functional groceries and everything, so I've been needing somewhere to put those things. But also I'm adding power outlets and light switches, which I love for Realism, and mine are by the creators SimPixels. And if you have seasons, this is also where I would throw in a thermostat or a radiator or whatever. I'm also adding the laundry machines from the laundry pack, and of course a mailbox, which I am notorious for forgetting until the very end of my builds. And with that, the house is officially built, okay, with only decorating left, which, like I said, I didn't go over in this video, but let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in me making a video on. But last and certainly not least, I want to give y'all the final and most important tip for building, which is to take your time and be patient, okay? Not only is this build almost completely unfurnished, but this video is also sped up and edited. The raw footage of this build is 3 hours, and I consider myself like kind of experienced with building, you know. I don't consider myself a beginner, so if you are someone trying to get into building for the first time, please understand that it might not be a fast process for you at first, and that no one starts off as an expert. So take your time, take breaks, start builds and come back to them a few days later if that's what you gotta do, okay? Just have grace with yourselves. And with that final tip, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up here. But I hope you all enjoyed it, and more importantly, I hope it was helpful. Like I said, let me know if you guys would like a more in-depth tutorial like this, but for decorating and my whole process for that. But don't forget to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you're not already, comment, all that stuff, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys. Ooh, that was bad. Hold on. Bye guys.